And also, we can even talk about Booker T. Washington, right, during those time periods of how the talented 10th approach of, hey, if we approach it from this standpoint. So how do we get that black bourgeois class that has those fancy degrees to be re-revolutionized, if you will, to start bringing up, let's say, said black woman, said sister that's off of Metropolitan right now? How do we start using our degrees, our mathematical skills, and so forth to bring up our entire race, opposed to just one group of people? To your point, being a race man and a race woman, right? How do we start doing that?
It's an excellent question. Also a very difficult question to answer. A lot of the black bourgeoisie, I would say, and actually, in terms of demographics, I would be considered part of the black bourgeoisie based on my level of formal education, my income level. So the question is, like, what are you doing with that, though? Right? And then I think that's the choice that a lot of people have to make. And that's a choice that I think we have to start presenting to our children, because you really got two choices. You're either going to use your faculties and your experience and your intellect to either assimilate into the current system, or you're going to use it to try to build a different system. And it's it can be a very difficult choice. But at least it's something that has to be presented, I think, explicitly. Because I think a lot of people never have anyone explicitly present them with the choice. Because we look at our example, what we consider our examples of success. Examples of success are those that were able to assimilate into the system, get a good job working for the white man, myself included. You know, I graduated college, got a good job working for the white man, working for the government, got a good government job, which is cool because, and that's the challenge, because nothing's all good and nothing's all bad. So it's like, it's cool to get the good job working for the government or working for the white man, because you know why? Because you can provide for food, clothing, and shelter. And as a human being, you need to be able to provide those things. And then when you have children, you got to be able to provide for their children. Now you got to provide food, clothing, and shelter for your children. So it is an honorable thing to be able to do that. But then you got to consider, okay, well, at what cost? And then it gets complicated, because you're like, okay, well, I don't want to support this system. I want to, even if you want to create a different system, it's like, how do I work toward creating a different system while still putting food on the table? And this is like, you know, this is the challenge. This is where it gets tricky. This is where it gets rough. And if we don't have enough, like, I guess, infrastructure in place in terms of the community, then, you know, it becomes even that much more difficult to be able to provide for yourself and for your family. You know, so, but I do think that if we had a critical mass of people with college degrees that at least had a goal of saying, like, I think it makes a difference if you're like, all right, I got these degrees, I got these jobs, but I at least know that this ain't the end all be all. At a minimum, that makes a huge difference, I think. Even if we still going to work every day, we still working those jobs, but at least in the back of our mind, we're like, this ain't it. Because this is part of why the society is the way it is. Because not only me, but thousands of other people, hundreds of thousands of other people are working these jobs. We're helping to maintain the machine. And the machine is functioning the way it's supposed to be. And what we really need to be doing is breaking the machine. Right? But a lot of us don't even have the thought that we could be doing something different. So I think fundamentally we got to at least and start having these conversations with young people. Like, look, one day you're going to have to make a choice. You know, like, yeah, you're going to get the degree, you're going to get the good job, you're going to make the money. Cool. You might, you know, have a nice apartment, have a nice house, drive a nice car, all that, take trips, do whatever you do, wear nice clothes, all that. But just know that there can be more to life than just that. And when I say more to life, I don't mean just more expensive clothes, a more expensive car, a bigger house, right? I think if more of us start thinking that way, then we'll start to consider other ways of living and how to divest from this system and figure out ways like, to divest, but also to still be comfortable. So in terms of the black bourgeoisie, and yeah, I think we should read books like, Black Bourgeoisie by E. Franklin Frazier. We should read his book and, read his analysis and see what we can take away from that. That book affected me in great ways. I mean, it like I said, I'm a member of that group, but I think there's a difference because I know that I want to create a different society where everybody can win, right? Whereas in this current society, you're only going to have a few winners.
Birthday too, man. Hey, when I saw the notes, I was like, I didn't even know, bro, that you had a birthday.
May 17th.
Yes, sir.
Like a week
May
after,
you did say May 17th.
Oh,
Happy
you
belated.
got my dad's birthday.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, cause I was
You
like,
a
I know somebody
Taurus.
with May 17th.
Yes, I am.
And then Kwame, he's on Malcolm X's birthday, right?
A day after.
A day after, on the
May
20th.
Yeah.
Aw,
After the 19th.
so sweet. All right, we rolling.
Cool.
You want me to move this?
Oh yeah, my bad, Akil. But
Thank you.
tell me I'm resting without telling me I'm resting.
I know it has been a little minute.
I think Akil might have been the Gus Wood.
Gus
That was the
Wood.
last one I did in person.
It's been a
Bro,
while
I saw that one
man,
too.
Thank you, bro. He
Yeah.
spoke very highly of you too, man.
Yeah.
Now, actually, I try to get this close as possible. There you go.
I'm like, bro, Gus, he could have played like DN in the league or something, man.
That's a big dude.
It's good people though. I'm like, Gus, you are a unit, man.
But he's so nice.
Yeah, nah, he's a great
Like,
dude.
he will fold you, bruh. Okay, grab yours from here.
Yeah.
Yep, it's on. Okay,
One,
just
two.
wanna make sure it's on. You're good.
3, 4.
All right, we're good, Joe. We're rolling.
Ooh. Are you comfortable, Akil?
Yeah.
Cool. Good people, what's up? What's good, y'all? Blessed be. Good. Good people, what's up? What's good, y'all? I'm blessed to be your host, Caleb Smith. Hey, as you guys see, man, one of my personal favorites, man, Akil Parker. He's back in the A, man. Had to make this episode happen for you guys. And it's just timely. Like, it's so much going on during this moment in time. So, bro,
Yeah.
you pull back up to Atlanta at the perfect time. At this point, man, you got to start telling people that you from Philly, Baltimore, in Atlanta, bro. Because you be at, bro, he's always here in the A. I love it, man.
East Coast affiliated.
East Coast affiliated. Akil Parker, how you feeling, dog?
I feel good, man.
Good, bro.
This is one of my favorite podcasts.
Love, man. Thank you,
Yeah,
bro.
man.
Thank you. Hey, this episode, I feel like this is about to be one of the best, if not the best, that we've had yet. Because, again, with everything that's going on, I think that, this is going to speak to today's times.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
man, starting out, bro, talk to me, man, about Dallas, Texas. What did you have going on in Dallas, Texas?
Dallas,
recently?
Texas. Okay, so I was intentional. I wore this T-shirt. This is a T-shirt from the Pan-African Connection bookstore. Well, actually, it's not just a bookstore. It's a bookstore and resource center.
Wow.
It's been like a community institution for 37 years. And in the location it's in now, in the Oak Cliff section of Dallas, it's been there in this like shopping center for the last 10 years. And Mama Equata Tahimba, she's the owner. She was kind of schooling me, about the history of it. I crossed paths with her on Facebook. Wow. We became like Facebook friends maybe like 8 or 9 years ago, something like that. And, when I published my book in 2023, I started just reaching out to just different bookstores, different like black-owned bookstores, inquiring about like doing book talks. Of course, this was my first book, so I didn't know anything about book talks, how that works or anything. I just was like, well, let me reach out. And, she showed love, and we finally were able to make it happen because I was going out to Dallas because of a conference, an education conference that was taking place in Oklahoma in the Choctaw Nation. So that was a whole other thing. So I got this random email, like maybe like in January or February, from somebody. Could have been a scam. I thought for a minute, like maybe this is a scam or whatever, right? But it ended up being legitimate, right? For this professional learning conference for educators that they hold every year in the Choctaw Nation Resort and Casino, which is kind of wild, actually. Like, I mean, I've been to like casinos before that are like run by like, indigenous, tribes and whatnot. But I think at my current level of awareness, it was kind of interesting because okay, so and this is the thing. I did 3 presentations while I was at the conference, right? Because the drive from, and I was told by the people at the conference, like, it might make the most sense to just, fly into Dallas, get a rental car and drive up to Oklahoma, right? Because that's where it was, as opposed to flying into Oklahoma and then driving down like from Oklahoma City, because it's actually a longer drive, right? But, going up there and, doing my research to, try to like, accentuate the presentation, I learned about like the 5 civilized tribes, right? What is it? The Seminoles, the Chickasaw, the Creek, like the old heads say, like Lord willing and the creek don't rise. You know what I'm saying? Like, but even that, like looking at that from a mathematical standpoint, if the United States government identifies 5 tribes as civilized, that's a tacit statement or admission that there are uncivilized tribes. Now, so we get into, we do some critical analysis, and we're like, you should sit back and say, well, who is the United States government to ever identify anybody as uncivilized, considering the United States government's track record, in the genocide and Mayafa, enslavement, all these types of things. So it's just very interesting. And even when you're in the casino and, like just like in any hotel or whatever, hotel/casino, you see the artwork. They got very, very nice artwork on the walls, right? I'm walking through, the day of like, my presentation. I'm walking through the halls and whatnot. And I see this like nice painting of an indigenous woman, featured. And then I look across the hall. Right across the hall, another painting. It was a nice painting as far as artwork is concerned, but in terms of the content, you see like 4 white men, holding rifles, soldiers or whatever, and it's like, damn, like, so these were the people that like murdered her. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it's interesting how like they got them right there. You know what I'm saying? Like right there, juxtaposed across from each other. You know what I'm saying? But it's just things to think about. And But at the same time, like this is considered artwork, right? But if you don't have like the cultural grounding and the historical awareness to even see any contradiction there, then you'll just think, oh well, it's just a painting, But it's really not though. It's like it's kind of like, my son made a comment. I was talking to him about this kind of idea and this reality of like the history of America. And he made this connection. He said to me, he was like, yo, bro, he was like, yeah, it's like drill rap. Like America is like the original drill rappers. It's like I'm smoking on my ops. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like, okay, we got professional sports teams named after the people they committed genocide against, all of that. You know what I'm saying? Like, now you got the casino, you know what I'm saying? And it's not completely owned by, descendants of the Choctaw Nation. You got European companies that are like supplying food and, supplying workers and, all types of things. So it was just interesting, like being in that space and like seeing that, firsthand. But I did 3 presentations, I did 1 presentation twice, and then I did a separate presentation one time. One of the presentations was, what does it mean to carry the one? And other examples. But I was really getting at is like getting us to understand, have a conceptual understanding of a lot of things we do in math, we learn in like elementary and middle school, but you might not know like what it's really for. Because there's like algorithmic understanding of math, and then there's conceptual understanding of math. And a lot of people get the algorithm, we memorize the steps, memorize the processes, but we don't really know why it works. We don't really know how it works and all that. So that's what it was about. Like, for a long time, like I didn't know like what that meant when you carry the one. Like, what does that one represent? It could be a group of 10, it could be a group of 100, it could be a group of 1,000. But as a child, I didn't really know that. And even when I became a teacher, like I didn't really know that. I didn't know that till like probably like maybe 6 or 7 years ago when I had to teach math methods at Cheney University. And I'm teaching education majors, about the conceptual background of a lot of the math that they would be responsible for teaching to students when they get into their own classrooms. So that's what that presentation was about. And then the second presentation was, about hystematics, of course, where I use Black history to, as an entry point for teaching mathematics. But, of course, I incorporated like some of the history of the Choctaw Nation and whatnot, and also even talked about in terms of like carrying the one, because how like on your paper when you carry the one, you put the one up and to the left and the next column up to the left. So one of the things I said to the people in the audience was like, look, there's a overlap where you could say, this kind of models the pattern, the migration pattern due to the Trail of Tears, because the Choctaw was originally in Mississippi, and they kind of got pushed out of Mississippi and pushed up to the left or northwest toward Oklahoma. So it's like, when you're talking to your children about that, like, this is how we do the mathematics. Oh yeah, and as a way to remember, oh, this is similar to what happened to the Choctaw. I've talked about that before, but I think I got that idea because like previously I talked about like our migration patterns in the United States with the Great Migration, us going like, just north, and some of us went, northwest. People like, Huey Newton, his family, they was in Louisiana. They went out to Cali, to the Bay Area and all that. So just a way to like, combine the, the mathematics with the history, with the historical experiences. So that's originally why I ended up in Dallas. But when I knew I was going to Dallas, I reached out to Mama Equator, and I was like, I'm going to be in Dallas, you know what I'm saying? So is it possible we do a book talk at Pan-African Connection? She was like, definitely, like, we got time. So it was like that Saturday we did that. The conference wasn't until Monday. So I ended up driving up to Oklahoma that Sunday. But on Saturday, I pulled up to the bookstore and, and it's a cool spot because, you get everything. They got books there. They got, get your shea butter, your incense, your oils, your T-shirts. I bought this T-shirt from there. That's some other. I grabbed a Paul Robeson T-shirt, another, a new Malcolm X T-shirt, another Kwame Ture T-shirt, a Juneteenth T-shirt. I think I was racking up, but some trying and supporting black business. You know what I'm saying? But yeah. But I think that marketing and that propaganda is important. Because, young brother, young sister might see me with a Paul Robeson T-shirt on. I might record one of my YouTube videos on while I'm wearing that Paul Robeson T-shirt. And they might say, oh, who's Paul Robeson? They might want to actually look him up, hopefully. And of course I'm going to mention him, within the video at the same time. So yeah, and it was also cool because, like, we created the flyer and whatnot. Oh, yeah, shout out to my daughter. Shout out to Asada. Asada took a digital literacy course in middle school. This year, last year also, but this year she learned how to use Canva. So she created the flyer. And then, I shared the flyer with Mama Equator, and she shared it. I was sharing it on my network, on my social media and whatnot. And, but even beyond that, people that was just randomly just in the bookstore that was there, I was like, oh, yeah, I'm about to do a presentation on my book, come through. You know what I'm saying? So they was there. It was like, all right, we'll chill. You know what I'm saying? So it was really organic. So I'm just, sitting there talking about my book, How to Use All This Math, Volume 1, as a resource guide for parents, how they can take the everyday activities they're already doing and leverage those and use those as teachable moments and like algebra lessons, arithmetic lessons, geometry lessons, and so on. So, 'cause that's what we got to get back to anyway. We got to get back to, like we talked about other times, like, the parents and the families being the primary educators and letting the school be the space for practice, as opposed to we just outsourcing to the school completely. Like, we got to get back to the days when we realized that we had to do it. Like, we had to take that responsibility and kind of covet that responsibility. Like, we got to be the ones to do that, So yeah, it was all love. So yeah, shout out to Pan-African Connection. So if anybody's ever in Dallas, go through. It's in the Oak Cliff section. Go check them out. Go over there, spend some money. Spend some money. You know what I mean? There's a couple spots in there that, in that same shopping center, they sell some good catfish and whatnot. You know what I'm saying? I had to partake in. You know what I mean? So yeah, so that's why I was in Dallas. So I was in Dallas for those reasons, to do that book talk at Pan African Connection, and also then traveled up to Oklahoma and presented to some educators at their professional learning conference that they have every year. So it's cool, man. I was grateful for that, because now I'm at the point where as a result of like putting out the work and being consistent, people see what you do. Because I asked the woman that originally emailed me from their school district, I was like, how did you find out about me? Because like I said, at first I thought it was a scam, right? So she was like, I think I saw one of your posts or a clip or something you did like on Facebook or something like that. And she told me, I was like, okay. I was like, cool. So, is anybody watching like that feels like, oh, my work is going unrecognized and this is a waste of time? Like, yeah, just keep grinding. Somebody's gonna see you.
That's right.
Somebody's gonna see you. You're gonna get the opportunity. And it's gonna be, because at first we start out like, reaching out to people to try to get opportunities, and as you should, right? But then eventually, once people see you, right, as a result of you reaching out to people, then people are gonna start reaching out to you. That's just what's gonna happen.
Akil Parker already cooking, ladies and gentlemen, all this math, bro. Akil, man, I'm super excited about this conversation. Dr. Kaba, bro, we had a great conversation. I'm over the phone. This might have been like last Wednesday, and man, he had said the same thing that you had just talked about cultural awareness is just as important as mental health too. And to your point from your son, that was genius of how America is like the OG drill rapper. Right, of how we see the statues, the monuments, the sports figures, right? Whether we're watching the Florida State Seminoles at the time, in D.C. with the Redskins, Cleveland Indians. So for our young black minds,
Atlanta Braves.
I got confirmation bias. You're right. Tomahawk chop growing up, and crazy fact, man. When they were the Boston Braves, they used to have a little black kid go out in the middle of the field with feathers on. So it was always, just derogatory towards them and all of that. So, man, with all that being said, how do we properly equip our young black minds to be inside of these spaces to where you have to understand and be culturally aware that they're basically trying to ish on you, basically, when it comes to us and our history? So how do we have that cultural confidence, cultural capital, if you will, when we are entering inside of these white educational spaces?
I think we as parents or grandparents or just elders in the community, we just have to be honest with our children and just let them know about these realities. Because some people would argue that, they take a ignorance is bliss approach. And they say, well, I'm not going to, talk to my children about this. I don't want them to know that or whatever, because it might be too hard for them to accept, or they might not be able to deal with the contradiction, but they're still being exposed to it regardless. Yeah. So I think my opinion is, and as a parent, I say, this is what I've done, is like I've exposed my children to these things. I let them know about the realities of America, the realities of Western society. And I let them know that even, you do have to navigate these spaces appropriately, but just know what it is you're dealing with. Yeah. Know where you are and know who you are. And I think that will motivate us to want to be more nationalistic, want to be more Pan-African nationalistic. Because even when I'm talking to Kwame right now, or when I used to have these conversations about money, U.S. currency, with Asada when she was younger, or with Nassim when he was younger, I'm like, okay, so here's a dollar bill. It's got George Washington on it. So that means we're celebrating George Washington, or at least this country is celebrating George Washington. They're elevating him, right, as a model of excellence, because it's a privilege to have your face on money, right? But then you also know that he was a slaveholder. You know that he didn't believe in the humanity of black people. So now then you can say, okay, and again, this is also mathematical thinking. Then you can say, okay, but this nation still privileges him and still elates a person that thought that you were not human and thought that our ancestors weren't human, right? So now we have a decision to make. So now it's like Frantz Fanon, one of his quotes, like, once you know the truth, you only have two choices. You can either embrace it or deny it. You can lie to yourself and act like you don't know the truth. Or you can be honest and act like you know the truth and act accordingly, right? So my hope is that, my children will act accordingly. And I think that's what we as parents have to do. We as community members, it's like, expose the children. Let them know what's going on. Let them know the reality. And give them healthy ways to navigate it. And sometimes it doesn't necessarily mean you got to be all rah-rah and, out here, whatever, crashing out in class, in your history class or whatever, because maybe that's not the most appropriate approach. But at least you know. You quietly know, and even if on the test in social studies class or in your U.S. history class or world history class, you gotta put the correct answer according to the curriculum, but at least in your mind, you know, okay, this is not the reality, but I'm trying to get the A. Maybe you just do that, but at least you know. You know, and I always think at a minimum we should know. You know, even if we don't necessarily protest against it actively in that moment, at a minimum we know. We know better, and I think that's like the one of the most important things. And it's our responsibility as adults to also know, so that we can teach the children. Because if we don't know, then we can't teach the children. And there are a lot of things that the children don't know, and oftentimes they don't know it because their old heads didn't know, because we didn't take the time to learn it, because we was probably dancing or partying or getting high, getting drunk, or chasing women, or getting women getting chased by men or whatever, and that was our focus, right? But yeah, we got to prepare our children.
Indeed, brother. Hearing that, as you know, I was out in Denver all week. National conference for colleges, things like that, employers, called NACE. But all of the black colleges, or black colleagues rather, that I would talk to, have conversations with, I noticed how they had feelings of sometimes like not feeling welcome in higher ed spaces, or credibility, credentials being questioned because they're young and black and fly and cool. And then, man, like in those moments, those conversations, I thought about you, because I'm like, man, Akil, he was at Cheney, Temple. Like, so what did you go through, man, from your own personal time, from being somebody that's cool, wearing Jordans, wearing Nikes, but the smartest man in the room? Like, did you have those moments of where white colleagues sometimes would question your own intelligence, own credentials, and credibility sometimes?
I don't necessarily remember having those experiences. I may have, but if I did, they don't come to mind. But I may have just tuned them out, or maybe I was just, kind of naive in terms of like just not being focused on them. Because like, I think we talked about this before too. Like, I know my history, and I know their history. So it's like, we're the original human beings, and I know what the intellectual work that my ancestors have done, and have the systems, that the intellectual systems and intellectual analysis that my ancestors have done and been responsible for, and how it has influenced the world. Like, I'm aware of these things, so it would just be funny to me for somebody to question like my credentials, especially about something that is documented, and I can document like I know this, I know this is my lane. Like, I don't know everything, but I know a lot of things, and I tend to like stay in my lane, so yeah, but I do often hear like stories and accounts of people like having their credentials questioned, and I just I think part of it too is that maybe it would be expected, it'd be expected. So, and because but I think in the larger context, the larger political context, since I expect it, and I know why I expect it, and I know why it would be and why it has been, I think it would just kind of just roll off of me, and I think I just wouldn't really worry about it as much, me personally. Because again, I'm not trying to impress them. Because I've come in contact with a lot of our people that unfortunately they seek validation from whiteness. So when you seek the validation from whiteness, and then the white man or the white woman looks at you and looks at your degrees and questions the validity of them, then you feel like a failure, because your entire life you've been conditioned to want their appreciation and want their approval. So then for them to tell you like, no, we don't approve, I don't recognize this, right? that could be very hurtful. But I think that's the problem originally is that you shouldn't have wanted their validation anyway, right? Because we come from a tradition that predates them anyway. Our intellectual tradition predates their intellectual tradition. They were children learning from us. This is historically documented. Even, in terms of a mathematical example, Pythagorean theorem. Europeans are very very, very equipped at and very effective at marketing. So, but Pythagoras studied in ancient Kemet for 22 years. And that Pythagorean theorem, a squared plus b squared equals c squared, was on the Amos papyrus, commonly known as the Ron papyrus, but they name it after Ron because he was the European archaeologist or whatever that is credited with discovering it. But Amos was the scribe in ancient Kemet that actually wrote it out for the pharaoh, right? So, and the scribe, the papyrus was like a textbook, basically, like an old school textbook, basically, with a lot of formulas on it and a lot of mathematical truths on it, basically. So these are things that they learn from our people anyway. So me, like, knowing those types of things, it's like, it would be funny to me almost. It's like you try to, like, question me. I'm like, all right, I'm like, okay, this is like, why, like, I tend to, like, I don't usually argue with white people online. I really never have. I kind of I stay out of that because I'm like, y'all got that. But I observe a lot of the arguments and between black people and white people online, and I noticed that I could kind of tell that the black people are trying to prove their humanity and prove that they matter to these people. Yeah, they don't care. You're not going to convince them. You're not going to convince them. But the original problem is that they've been conditioned and socialized in a system where whiteness is the standard.
And you're seeking said validation.
You're seeking validation from them. That's the original problem. You shouldn't be seeking validation from them because you're never going to get it anyway.
That's right.
Even if it's like a temporary validation, okay, I'll give you a job or I'll let you work here, I'll let you teach here, or whatever. What they say, like, if I make you, I could take you, right? If I give you this opportunity, I could take the opportunity away from you.
If I can feed you, I can starve you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what we got to start thinking about.
Indeed. Hearing that then, right, Akil, do you feel like we study our enemy enough, or do you think that we need to start studying our enemies more? Because to that same point, right, if we just look throughout history, historical context, right, they study us to a T. To your point about the marketing, psychological warfare, educational warfare, whether that's sports, financial warfare, all the types of spiritual, when we go to religion, all of that. So do we study our enemy enough, in your own opinion, to kill?
Not at all. Nowhere near enough. And I was going to bring up what you said, like, because we've been studied by them, but we haven't studied them. We haven't studied other groups, like I often think about a lot of the old speeches from the 1960s, 1970s from people like Malcolm X, Dr. King, Kwame Ture, Walter Rodney, from further back, Marcus Garvey or whoever. And I'm sure that in some think tanks, they've studied these speeches. Because when I look at commercial rap music, which is not controlled by us, we may be the progenitors of it, the actual artists, but we don't control the content. We don't control what we're actually saying. I mean, they might write the raps, write the bars, but you got to get the green light from some white man that's writing the checks, or some white woman that's writing the checks, right? And it's almost like, okay, I remember this Kwame Ture speech from 1966 or 1968, or this Malcolm X speech from 1963. And what this very popular rapper is saying is the exact antithesis of what they told our people to do, which was gonna lead us to freedom and liberation, right? So I'm like, I know they studied us. They had to have studied us, right? So I think we don't study them enough, and I think when another problem is when we do study them, we study them or many of us, we study them in an attempt to emulate them, so as to be able to better assimilate into Western society, into American society, and become these like honorary, like Negro-peans. That's what we attempt to do. Instead of being secure in who we are as a people, and then studying them because, okay, they control the society, so we need to know what we're up against. We need to know what may happen to us and what they may or may not do to us if we're not careful. So also the study has to be for a certain goal and an appropriate goal, right? So yeah, but to your question, like we definitely don't study them enough.
Assimilation. That's an excellent point, right? Instantly, man, I think about talented 10th, code switching, right? As a young brother, man, who's been killing it now for decades, higher education, educational fields, all of that. How do you feel about code switching, assimilation, all of those things? Do you feel like it's a means to an end? Do you even feel like it's still deemed necessary in 2026 right now for black people, especially black men, to code switch in the workplace, especially in educational fields?
So code switching, I think, is just a form of communication. And it's just when we're communicating, we consider our audience. You know what I mean? We want to be as effective as we possibly can. And also considering that these are spaces that we don't control. So if we don't control the space, then I don't particularly have a problem with speaking in a way that, I wouldn't necessarily speak in another space that I did have power over.
Understood.
Yeah, I don't personally, I don't have a problem with that.
Okay.
And I think it's important to know how to code switch, how to switch it up. But again, not because we privilege that type of speech, but because we're just trying to navigate that space in that particular point in time. I do think it can be problematic when you code switch because you think that this type of speech is superior than the way you might talk when you're on the corner or on the block. And in terms of documentation of that, I go back to Kwame Ture. One of his books before he changed his name, when he was still Stokely Carmichael, right? The book Stokely Speaks, the collection of speeches and and whatnot that he delivered. Chapter 1 is actually not a speech; it's actually a transcript of a freedom school lesson he was doing in Mississippi. And essentially, the point was he was talking to these young people, and he was letting them know, look, the way y'all talk naturally is deemed and perceived as unintelligent and inferior. But that is a function of power. See, algebra, there we go, functions, right? That's a function of who's in power. If you all had power, then the way you speak would be seen as the standard. And then the white people up at Harvard or wherever, if they spoke different from you, then perhaps you could say that they sound unintelligent because they don't have the power. So it's very arbitrary. But we go to public schools, neo-colonial schools, whether they be public, charter, even private sometimes, and we're taught that intelligence is equated with a form of speech that is acceptable to Western society, when it's very arbitrary. Because we think about what's the purpose of speech? To communicate an idea. So I'll give you another example. When Asada was related to this, when Asada was younger, and she would say things and she wouldn't be using standard English, she would be using slang. I wouldn't correct her the way a lot of black parents correct children, which is to say, no, that's wrong, say it this way. I would first ask her the question, are you attempting to speak standard English right now? And if she said yes, then I'd be like, all right, well, that's not how you say it. But if she said no, then I'd be like, all right, you cool, do your thing. But then I might say, but just know if you were, this is how you would say that. Because I don't privilege the English language. Because when we study an English language, get into the linguistics, we know it's a garbage can language anyway. It's a hodgepodge, bunch of different, words from a whole bunch of different languages put together. And I mean, even amongst the Western languages or the European languages, look at like Greek and Latin. Like, where does English rank in relation to Greek and Latin? But for a lot of our people, a lot of black folks that don't know that, they just privilege the English language because they see that as like a passport toward being respected or, being seen as more of a human. But again, that goes back to the thing. Like, again, that's another form of trying to get validation. We got to stop trying to get validation from these people because we're never going to get it anyway. And your language it might not be accepted in a space that you don't control. I mean, we got to understand, okay, who's in control of the space? And who am I trying to communicate with? But don't think that just because you made code switch that, you're like you're more human now because you've done it. Because that doesn't make you more of a human. It's just another language.
Hey, you cooking, brother. What do you think makes our people so adaptable, right? Because seeing, someone such as yourself, our black men, our black women, you could be in a classroom or better yet in Oklahoma giving out a dope presentation. You could then be at a bookstore giving out a great talk, but then you could be on the block just kicking it, but then also you could be tutoring thousands of kids. What do you think makes our people so adaptable?
Just our intelligence, our natural intelligence, and our command of content, like whatever the content is. Adaptable. I mean, we know how to survive, and we know how to communicate. We figure out ways to communicate different ideas. That's just what we do. That's what we've always done. That's what we've had to do. So I think that's what it is. I think it's just our natural intelligence, and also we've had elders, and like I said, since we've always done that, our elders have passed that on intergenerationally, and we just been doing it, and we just continue to do it, and we will continue to do it, as appropriate. But again, I wanna reinforce this idea that we have to make sure that however we communicate, we're not seeing it as a way to feel more human if we feel like our form of communication is closer to a white standard or a European standard.
Hearing that, bro, it sounds like ancestral intelligence, right? That's being passed down, right? In my opinion, the purest form of quote unquote AI, right? In this current age of artificial intelligence, right?
Yeah.
How do we tap in more so with that ancestral intelligence too, while still trying to adapt to this era of artificial intelligence, in your own opinion?
I think we got to study. We got to just start reading the works and the writings of our ancestors and listen to the speeches. Like some of them have speeches, that you can find access to on YouTube. Some people probably like me got DVDs. If you still got a DVD player.
VHS tapes, you got the VHS tapes.
I actually do have some VHS
those are
tapes.
classics,
Yeah, I do got some VHS tapes.
Yeah.
Not that many, but I got a couple.
Yeah.
I got a whole lot of DVDs. That matter of fact, I used to get from some of them I used to get from Black and Nobel in North Philly.
Wow.
Right at Broad and Erie. You know what I'm saying? Before everything went, online.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I like the DVDs because with everything being online, unfortunately, at any given moment, somebody could flick a switch and everything online could be gone. So I don't trust it. So that's why I like the idea of like cassette tapes
Back
and
to the basics, Akil.
VHS tapes and DVDs. I like that because, I don't trust this system. I have to navigate it and live within it, but in reality, I don't trust it.
Yes, sir.
But yeah.
I feel that. It's grad season, man, and this might have been like last week, 2 weeks ago, and I'm scrolling on my Instagram. I'm on your story. I'm like, all right, Akil, hey, I saw your daughter, baby girl, graduated, man. Talk to me about that, man. What was that experience like, seeing that firsthand?
That was a great experience. As a father, I'm realizing that, like, my daughter's growing up. She's approaching young womanhood. So it's a new experience for me. So it's an education that I'm gonna have to partake in. Things I'm gonna have to learn how to parent her differently, because she has different needs than she had when she was 4 versus being 14. Or even 10 or 11. Versus being 14, and then she's embarking upon high school. So she's gonna have different responsibilities, a different level of independence. But it was rewarding. I was joking with her, saying that, this is actually my graduation. Like, this is not really your graduation. I was joking with her about that. But I also, in addition to my daughter, I want to shout out a couple others. So my nephew, 2 of my nephews also graduated. My nephew Zaire, who lives out in L.A., he graduated from the 5th grade, so he's going to middle school next year. And my nephew Amir, him and Asada are like neck and neck. Asada's born in February, Amir's born in March. So I guess if Asada wanted to, she could harass him and refer to him as her little cousin. He probably wouldn't like that, but but technically she wouldn't be wrong. But he graduated from the 8th grade also. So his graduation was on Wednesday. My dad actually went to all 3 graduations, so he was like on tour. So he flew out to L.A. for Zaire's graduation. Then the next day he ended up flying back to the East Coast and came to Philly for Asada's graduation on Tuesday. And then Wednesday he was in Baltimore for Amir's graduation. So yeah, he was on a world tour.
Shout out to Pops, man.
Yeah.
Love, man. Present fatherhood. THCon 2026 here in the A, bro. Talk to me, man, about that. What's going on? You're presenting. One thing, man, I love every conference that you show up to, you are presented, man. So talk to me about that, THCon 2026.
Yeah, man. So this is THCon. It stands for the Treasure Hunt Conference. Treasure Hunt Conference is 2026. They didn't have it in 2025. The first time I presented was in 2024. So I was there in 2024. I think the first year they had it was 2023. So they went 23, 24. They skipped 25 and then had it again this year, just now. So I actually did my presentation yesterday. And my presentation was on this idea of, what if we can incorporate math literacy and also the ability to teach math into our expectations of black manhood, right? And even with the idea that, there are different people in our community that have different definitions of black manhood and what that should look like exactly and specifically. But whatever your definition is, what if we make sure that saying, look, if you're a black man, we expect you to know math and be math literate. We expect you to understand algebra. We expect you to understand geometry and arithmetic at a fundamental level. And with that level of understanding, we expect you to be able to like pull up some youngins and be able to teach them these skills. Just like how black men, talk to young people and say, look, young brother, you need to be doing this, or whatever. The old heads on the block always got something to say about certain things, right? Some of the guidance they provide is beneficial, some maybe not as beneficial, but they're providing guidance. So what I'm saying is, I think that we need as a community a paradigm shift where math literacy, so that they can then in turn teach math, becomes part and parcel of how we view manhood. Because a lot of, there are a lot of, typical things that we do that we think of when we think of manhood. Like, okay, men are athletic, or they like to at least watch sports if they're not athletic. Men can fight and defend themselves. Men have sexual prowess. Some of us believe that being promiscuous makes you more of a man, right? All of these things, right? But I'm saying, like, all right, so whether you believe that or not, some of those things are healthy, some of them are not healthy, not as healthy. But I want to throw math literacy into that mix, because as men, I think one thing I stand on is that men should be providers and protectors for their families, their communities as well. And when you provide education should be provided, because education is such a benefit. Education is also a form of protection, because when a child is more educated, they're going to make better choices, and they can defend themselves against somebody or some entity that may want to harm them or take advantage of them. So with mathematics being a subject that we can educate on, it just makes sense, especially when we think about the parallel between mathematics and problem solving, mathematics and critical thinking, because we think about how many bad choices we make or people make because they don't know how to think critically. And like I've said before, like sitting in a mathematics classroom, an arithmetic class in elementary school, an algebra 1 class in 8th grade if you're lucky. But, even if you got to wait till high school to get algebra 1, just doing problems on a regular basis, you're actually practicing critical thinking on a regular and consistent basis, even if you don't know it. And if you can think critically, you can problem solve. And if you can problem solve, I think we already would agree that that's part of manhood, because a lot of when you have like a dope father or a dope grandfather or a dope uncle, one of the things that makes them dope and one of the reasons you appreciate them is because you know that if you have a problem, you can go to them like, Dad, what should I do? And Dad's going to come through with a solution. Your grandfather's going to come through with a solution. Your uncle's going to come through with a solution. Right? So and that's problem solving. So think about how much better of a problem solver you'd be if you were strong at mathematics. And then you can then teach that skill to your sons, your daughters, your nieces, your nephews, young brothers and sisters just in the community, in the neighborhood, right? So that's what the presentation was about. It was pretty well received. And we also just talked about, because the presentation kind of had two parts. It was about the marketing aspect of just the idea, which is probably going to be foreign to a lot of people that have been conditioned to try to stay as far away from math as they possibly can anyway, right? But then some practical examples that we, have talked about before, like some of the ideas from my book, how to use all this math, volume 1, license plate games, negative age, calculating the unit price of like one Cheez-It, one Dorito, one cookie in a pack of Oreos or Chips Ahoy or whatever. You know what I'm saying? There's basic math we can do on a regular basis to do that, to calculate those things. And it develops our confidence in mathematics. But the thought is, well, what if, the men in the community were doing that? What if the men in the community? Not to say that the women shouldn't do it. I think I could do the same presentation and direct it at women as well. But THCon is about empowering black boys specifically. So that's why that was the focus of this presentation. It was about the men and about the boys, But that's what that was about. So I'm thankful for the opportunity to have been able to present there for the second time, and I like presenting, and talking about math, and then networking, and then sharing ideas, and then having the people in the audience like ask questions and even push back on certain things, which gives me things to think about, The president of the Benjamin Banneker Association, which is basically a math organization that I'm a part of. She was there. She was present, and I appreciated the fact that she told me that with some of the things I was offering, she said that they inspired her. Inspired her because they already have an initiative to, provide mathematics education to the community, to the general community. So that's already an initiative. But I think they may be looking for like a framework. So some of the things I was talking about can serve as a framework. Because the idea is great, but then the question becomes, how are you going to do it? How do you implement? The implementation. So got to come down to Atlanta, presented the conference. We was over at Atlanta Metro Technical College. Yeah. Yeah. So they said Stewart used to be Stewart Avenue.
Yeah, Stewart Avenue, like Pittsburgh, all of that.
Yeah. Yeah. So when I was driving over here, right? So you mentioned the brother Gus Wood, and I think his book is important for a lot of reasons, and a lot of books that speak to class analysis, and I'm gonna tell you why. I'm gonna give you a real example. So I'm driving to meet my homeboy earlier this afternoon. He was up at he told me to meet him at Sea Salt spot up there. So I was gonna meet him up there. But I'm driving and I'm on Metropolitan right before it turns into North Side Drive.
Okay, yeah.
So I'm on there, and it was a sister. She looked like she was housing insecure. Looked like she might have had some like mental health issues.
Metropolitan for sure, yeah.
She comes out into the street, and I'm sitting in traffic, and she like, spits at my car, right? But my reaction is, I'm like, okay, I know I can see her condition, her situation, right? So I'm sure she's experienced a lot of trauma in her life, and she don't have it all together, right? But there are reasons for that, right? That are probably beyond her, probably not her fault. So I have empathy for her, right? But, and I'm wondering, okay, well, how was she when she was a child? How was she when she was a teenager? She probably had some traumatic life experiences that brought her to that, right? And just like a lot of the homeless people that we see that may seem to be acting erratic and whatnot, but I often think about like, okay, if she's homeless, she probably wasn't always homeless. She might have had a place to live at some point in her life, but then she might have been displaced. And then I'm thinking about, like, you know, what Dr. Wood talks about, like, you know, with the class warfare and the gentrification or settler colonialism. And I was thinking about, like, how, like, you know, because people tend to be real hard on people that are unemployed. And they be like, man, why don't you just go get a job? Like, your lazy ass. Like, go get a fucking job. People have a lot of angst and hostility towards people that are unemployed. However, here's the contradiction. When a company shuts down a factory that employed 5,000 people and basically just takes their jobs by shutting down that factory, there's no angst or hostility for that. But it's like, those were 5,000 people that had jobs that essentially did what the person that's critical did what you claim that they should be doing. And they already know that. They're like, yeah, I should have a job. I'm a grown man. I'm a grown woman. I should have a job. I should be employed. But then the company, the corporation, whatever it may be, then they just shut the company down and just take everybody's job. So I'm like, if you're going to be mad at the person that's unemployed for being unemployed, you should be just as mad as that company, that Fortune 500 company that shut down the operation so that they could, like, relocate the factory somewhere in China or in Vietnam somewhere so they could, like, have a higher a greater bottom line and make more profit. But you don't got no smoke for them, though. And the question is, like, well, why not? And I know it's a myriad of reasons. Some people they haven't been exposed to that type of thinking. They just buy into the propaganda. But I was thinking about that when I was thinking about that woman that, like, spit at the car, and I'm like, you know, at some point, you know, she might have, at some point in her life, she might have been, you know, living housing secure. And she's clearly, like, housing insecure right now. She may have developed some mental health issues that were never addressed. And a lot of those things are not going to be her fault. There are entities and, you know, corporations and government entities at play that had a responsibility that just neglected that responsibility because they didn't care about her. And that's from city to city. So, but I wanted to shout that out because I was thinking about that, like, you know, that's why the reading is key. Because oftentimes, like, we just get conditioned to believe certain things because when we're children, we hear our parents who love us, parents, grandparents, uncles, aunts, our favorite aunt, favorite uncle, say things that influence how we think and the ideas that we subscribe to. But then, and we may never challenge them. And, you know, people say things like, you know what I'm saying, like, you know, they should just get a job, they lazy ass or whatever. You know, and I got an aunt that I love dearly. I remember riding around with her, running some errands or something. And we was riding through a part of the city that, you know, was probably like a low income area. And, you know, people was hanging out on the corners or whatever, on the block or whatever. And she introduced me to the phrase, the more I see niggas, the more I like flies. So a lot of us, and at the time, I don't think I really understood what that meant. But then over time, I learned what it meant. I developed an understanding of it. And she's not a bad person, but I think that was a fucked up thing to say, especially when I got older and I understood what it meant. But I think that's why the reading is so important, because we got to read for ourselves so we can, like, develop our own opinions. Because, you know, and a lot of times the harmful takes that our loved ones have, whether it be our parents, grandparents, or just other elders in our community, they're actually trying to protect us. Because they're like, okay, this is what I understand, so I'm going to tell you this so that I can protect you and keep and urge you to stay away from these spaces, right? But it also serves the purpose of fomenting, like, you know, class contradictions and, you know, division within the community, you know, and alienation. Like, you alienate the person from other people in their community just because they don't have the same amount of formal education or they don't have the same income level. So we gotta figure out ways to manage that, you know, in a different way. But yeah, Yeah, I wanted to mention that because I was thinking about that earlier today.
Thank
You
you for
know,
that, bro, because that is a very profound point in analysis, right? Because
because it's like how did like you see that person on the corner,
how did
and
they
it's
get
like
there?
they fucked up. You could tell, right? But how did they get there?
What caused that?
Yeah.
And who caused that too?
Yeah. Did they just wake up one morning and of their own volition be like, you know what? I'm going to become mentally ill.
No.
I'm going to become homeless. And I'm going to act in a way that is consistent with my mental illness that I have that is not going to be addressed because I don't have the resources to address it. Right? How did they get that way? You know? What is it like? You know, if we go to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, why don't they have their needs met? You know, I don't think any of this is coincidental or accidental.
At all.
You know, but that's what we got to start thinking about. You know, when we're making the judgments of people we see in the street. You know what I'm saying?
Hearing that, right? Because again, that is a great analysis. Elon Musk, right? When I see reports about him potentially becoming the first trillionaire, right? Or Bezos, Dana White, how he's about to have something at the White House, UFC. Why do you think? I know, bro, it's crazy.
Idiocracy, man.
Trump even,
like
right?
the movie.
Yeah, bro, it's crazy. It's insane. Why do you think that I would say, romanticize, right? White wealth and these billionaires who make their money off of the poor. But then to your point, we then look down with angst towards the poor. But then the people that's making their money off of us and off of our backs, we love and admire or try to study them, all of those things. Because excellent point about factories, right? I think about in Detroit, how the Ford plant, the Chrysler plant, right? Those things shut down and they take those black jobs away.
Right.
Right. But then we're the same people. And I don't want to say we to generalize, but you'll see black people admire Elon Musk because he's wealthy, right? So why do you think that we tend to romanticize them, but then excellent point, look down on our people who are homeless, unhoused as well?
One reason is they've never studied capitalism. They've never studied monopoly capitalism. And they don't understand how that system functions and that it actually requires poverty. It requires there to be poor people. And they see that as the goal. They see that being a billionaire as the goal. And here's where the mathematics comes into play. Because I think a lot of people that see being a billionaire as the goal don't really understand how much money that actually is. If you break it down on a daily basis or a monthly basis, like if you wanted to make $1 billion in a year, first of all, let's look at it like this. $1 billion is $1 million 1,000 times. Now let's talk about what $1 million is. Most people on earth will not make $1 million in a year. But what if a person did make $1 million in 1 year? How much would they make per month? Based on the Gregorian calendar, we got a 12-month calendar. That's like what? A little less than $100,000 per month? Because $100,000 per month is going to be $1.2 million. Right? So let's say a little less than $100,000 per month. Most people on earth don't make $100,000 in a year. So you're talking about the amount of money that most people won't make in a year, making that in a month, every month of a year, and then multiply that times 1,000, and that's only $1 billion. So you rooting for somebody that is going to have $50 billion? You like they're winning? I got into a disagreement with this brother at my cousin's graduation cookout last month. And he didn't understand that, you know, having that amount of money is a form of hoarding. Yeah. He didn't understand it as a concept.
Because you don't need it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think he had never interrogated. I think his whole life he probably has just been conditioned to like the goal is to make more money, make more money, make more money. Has never considered that, well, maybe you don't need that. Maybe the community should have more resources. And I'm not even talking about handouts, because I know that's the first thing somebody's going to say, oh, you want to give handouts. No. Create community programming, create opportunities for people to learn things in order to provide for the community, in order to become good stewards and productive members of society. But people have to be taught skills. But who's going to teach them? Teachers. Teachers need to be paid, though. So he just either couldn't get it or refused to get it. And this is like an educated brother with a bachelor's degree and a law degree. He was an attorney. So, and a lot of times I think in our community, our issues are proliferated by those that are more formally educated. So it's not the quote unquote niggas on the corner that are really the problem. And this is something that Amos Wilson often talked about. It's those of us that are formally educated. We're the problem. With all our fancy degrees and everything, we still don't understand very basic things. And we help maintain the status quo. And we become the black face for white power. That's what we do. But so yeah, people are gonna root for Bezos and people are gonna root for Elon and but I think there's historical ignorance as well, because Elon is a beneficiary of apartheid South Africa. His people was the same folks that was profiting because Nelson Mandela was in prison, Oliver Tambo was in prison, Mangaliso Robert Sobukwe was in prison, Chris Hani got murdered. All of them like freedom fighters and revolutionaries that was fighting against apartheid was doing what they was doing. He's a beneficiary of the fact that they were defeated. And I think we don't look at him in that context because we look at him like he is, again, Europeans have very strong marketing. He's been marketed as just this brilliant white man. Got it out the mud. Yeah, got it out the His parents was already billionaires. His parents was already millionaires. He had like an emerald mine that they owned or something like that. So
off of black wealth.
Yeah. So we want to, but again, that's the assimilationism.
That's right.
That we want. So we see it's like the whole, if I can't beat them, join them. Like you want to join them. And I'm like, okay, if that's what you want to do, cool. But just at least admit it. Be honest. That's another thing. Like I think too many of our people, we're dishonest because we want to act like it's like something wholesome. Like, nah, you just want to be with them. But just come out and say that. But see, they won't say that because either they don't recognize that that's what they're doing, so they can't articulate it, or then that'll go against their whole fraudulent, so-called representation of black nationalism. Because they use a lot of the language of black nationalism from the 1970s. A lot of the language of Malcolm X, language of people like Kwame Ture and people of that nature, of that type, to try to make them seem more palatable to the black community. So if they were honest, like, nah, really, I'm just trying to assimilate and be down with the white folks, then they would lose some of their crowd. But some of us, unfortunately, would still be dumb enough to support them, even if they were honest. But that's why they can't be honest, though.
Black face for white power.
Yeah. Amos Wilson said that.
My goodness.
Can't even take credit for that.
Hey.
That's Amos Wilson.
Come on, Akil. To your point, brother, right? I think about W.B. Du Bois, and also we can even talk about Booker T. Washington, right? During those time periods of how the talented 10th approach of, hey, if we approach it from this standpoint. So how do we get that black bourgeois class that has those fancy degrees to be re-revolutionized, if you will, to start bringing up, let's say, said black woman, said sister that's off of Metropolitan right now? How do we start using our degrees, our mathematical skills and so forth to bring up our entire race opposed to just one group of people? To your point being a race man and a race woman, right? How do we start doing that?
It's an excellent question. Also a very difficult question to answer. A lot of the black bourgeoisie, I would say, and actually, in terms of demographics, I would be considered part of the black bourgeoisie based on my level of formal education, my income level. So the question is, like, what are you doing with that, though? Right? And then I think that's the choice that a lot of people have to make. And that's a choice that I think we have to start presenting to our children, because you really got two choices. You're either going to use your faculties and your experience and your intellect to either assimilate into the current system, or you're going to use it to try to build a different system. And it's it can be a very difficult choice. But at least it's something that has to be presented, I think, explicitly. Because I think a lot of people never have anyone explicitly present them with the choice. Because we look at our example, what we consider our examples of success. Examples of success are those that were able to assimilate into the system, get a good job working for the white man, myself included. You know, I graduated college, got a good job working for the white man, working for the government, got a good government job, which is cool because, and that's the challenge, because nothing's all good and nothing's all bad. So it's like, it's cool to get the good job working for the government or working for the white man, because you know why? Because you can provide for food, clothing, and shelter. And as a human being, you need to be able to provide those things. And then when you have children, you got to be able to provide for their children. Now you got to provide food, clothing, and shelter for your children. So it is an honorable thing to be able to do that. But then you got to consider, okay, well, at what cost? And then it gets complicated because you're like, okay, well, I don't want to support this system. I want to, even if you want to create a different system, it's like, how do I work toward creating a different system while still putting food on the table? And this is like, you know, this is the chat. This is where it gets tricky. This is where it gets rough. And if we don't have enough, like, I guess, infrastructure in place in terms of the community, then, you know, it becomes even that much more difficult to be able to provide for yourself and for your family. You know, so, but I do think that if we had a critical mass of people with college degrees that at least had a goal of saying, like, I think it makes a difference if you're like, all right, I got these degrees, I got these jobs, but I at least know that this ain't the end all be all. At a minimum, that makes a huge difference, I think. Even if we still going to work every day, we still working those jobs, but at least in the back of our mind, we're like, this ain't it. Because this is part of why the society is the way it is. Because not only me, but thousands of other people, hundreds of thousands of other people are working these jobs. We're helping to maintain the machine. And the machine is functioning the way it's supposed to be. And what we really need to be doing is breaking the machine. Right? But a lot of us don't even have the thought that we could be doing something different. So I think fundamentally we got to at least like, and start having these conversations with young people. Like, look, one day you're going to have to make a choice. You know, like, yeah, you're going to get the degree, you're going to get the good job, you're going to make the money. Cool. You might, you know, have a nice apartment, have a nice house, drive a nice car, all that. Take trips, do whatever you do, wear nice clothes, all that. But just know that there can be more to life than just that. And when I say more to life, I don't mean just more expensive clothes, a more expensive car, a bigger house, right? I think if more of us start thinking that way, then we'll start to consider other ways of living and how to divest from this system and figure out ways like, you know, to divest, but also to still be comfortable, you know? So in terms of the black bourgeoisie, and yeah, I think we should read books like, you know, Black Bourgeoisie by E. Franklin Frazier. We should read his book and, you know, read his analysis and see what we can take away from that. You know, that book affected me in great ways. I mean, it like I said, I'm a member of that group, but I think there's a difference because I know that I want to create a different society where everybody can win, right? Whereas in this current society, you're only going to have a few winners. I mean, it's like NBA playoffs. Only one team. But it's what, 30 teams? 30 teams, so 29 teams got to lose. That's how the society is structured.
Somebody got to go to Cancun to kill.
Yeah.
Everybody can't be playing. Nah.
Exactly. So, but I want a system where everybody can win. Everybody can eat.
Yeah.
But in this system, it's like, nah, like everybody can't eat. It's by design.
Yeah.
It's by design. So, I think with Du Bois, I don't think his idea was wrong, but I think that he realized his error in that his expectations for the talented 10th were too high.
He even admitted that.
Yeah, he
Towards
admitted
the end
that.
of his life, yeah.
Yeah, so then he comes with what, like the guiding 100?
Yeah.
You know, but in any group, there's gonna be like a vanguard group, like an elite group, right? It doesn't mean they have to be an elitist group. That's the distinction that Sam Greenlee makes. Sam Greenlee, the author of The Spook That Sat by the Door, he talked about the difference between being elite and being elitist. Because you can be elite but still be a servant for your people. But when you're an elitist, you're elite, but you're not trying to serve your people. You want to go off ride off into the sunset somewhere and get away from these black people, right? When you're elitist, you want to go live with the white folks, right? But when you're elite, it's like, yeah, I have this skill, I have this ability. Like I'm very good at math, right? I put the time in. I was shooting in the gym, more than 10,000 hours in, right? So, but I want to teach it to everybody. So I'm elite at mathematics. I have mathematical proficiency. But I want our people to be able to benefit from that. I don't want just myself and my children to benefit from it, or maybe the parents who can afford to pay for tutoring for their children to benefit from it. Now I want to figure out. I'm still working to figure out ways for everybody to benefit, right? But if I was more elitist, I'd be like, you know, y'all niggas on your own.
I got mine.
I got mine. Yeah. Which is the position a lot of people take. It's the approach a lot of people take, which is why things don't change. And I think some people, they do that unwittingly. Some people do it very wittingly because they have a lot of anger and hostility within them that manifests itself. And they hate black people. There's a lot of black people that just hate black people.
Themselves.
Yeah. So they project it outward.
Don't be a menace, I think. Or, yeah, he's like, I hate your black gums. I hate black.
Bernie Mac, the cop.
Bernie Mac.
Yeah.
That's real talk.
Yeah, it's a very real thing. That's a ratio. Every pound of jokes is an ounce of truth. That's a 16-to-1 ratio.
Hello.
You know, in terms of ounces. But yeah, that's a real thing. But yeah, that also that difference between elite and elitist. But yeah, I think Du Bois realized his error in assessment of the community, but I think the idea was still solid because every group you're always gonna have like an elite group, and you should have an elite group because the elite group knows more.
That's right.
You know, in certain areas, so we need leaders. They're meant to be the leaders, but even that, like the elitists don't want to be leaders. They just want to have the skill and then go off and use their skill set to go work for the white man, or maybe the Asian man, or the Arab man, right? They don't want to fulfill the community. And also what I also say about that is it's a form of running off on the plug, because a lot of these same people that have these skill sets, when they were in elementary school, when they were in middle school, when they were in high school, they went to programs, went to after school programs, summer programs, Saturday programs.
Yeah.
That in many cases, some black people put together and created for them, so that they can have those benefits. And now when it's time, okay, now you are an adult now.
Clarence Thomas.
Exactly. Great example. Shining example of that. Now you got the opportunity to help the community now. You're not doing it. And yeah, I mean, we're busy. We got families, we got careers, we got jobs. But I'm like, you wouldn't have that career had them black people, when you was in elementary, middle, and high school, created those programs for you. So there's like this bottleneck. Because there's a lot of people out here that are like living well, eating good, because they went to those programs, but then somehow there's a lack of programs now. And the people that benefited from the programs are supposed to be the ones that are creating the programs. It's supposed to be intergenerational. That's how it's supposed to keep going.
Yeah.
But it's not working out like that for some reason.
Bro, you said a bar earlier. The machine is working like how it's supposed to. Right?
Yeah.
Man, from seeing so many young black men and black women financially insecure, right? Coming out of college, early 20s, mid 20s, even late 20s, even early 30s, even late 30s now, Akil. Like, it's getting treacherous out here. Mathematically speaking, right? How do we pivot properly during this time to where we see DEI funding getting cut, black women losing their jobs at a historical rate, black men, as we see, not getting hired, and now AI scans. Bro, at the conference, man, I found this out. Like, employers admitted that their AI, ATS, and all of that scans for like ethnic black names, and if it sees it's an Akil, or if it sees Jamal, or if it sees anything that just sounds black, Keisha, Shalonda, any of that, nope. X. So how do we properly pivot? And now it's so advanced, Akil, that they even scan for if you play basketball or if you play lacrosse, if you did fencing or golf, or if you play football. Like, it can know off of which sport you played. So how do we properly pivot during this time with mathematics for trying to beat that machine, to your point?
I think we need to train better hackers to hack into the system. Yeah, because like, if you know what the system's looking for, then, we got to figure out ways to, show the system to make ourselves look more favorable within that system. I say that jokingly. That's like a tongue-in-cheek comment, but I think there's some honesty to it. Like, yeah, because if the system is going to, like, screen you out, filter you out if you played basketball based on the assumption that, you might be black, you might be a Negro, then, okay, well, what do the white boys play? White boys are playing soccer, more of the white boys are playing soccer, lacrosse, volleyball maybe. We got to figure out ways to game the system if we can. But I don't know if, at least I can't think of one right now, a short-term solution to that. I think a more long-term solution is, and this is a solution that may not come to fruition until after I'm not physically here anymore. But us having, control of our own communities and having, like, taking a more nationalistic approach, more specific, like a Pan-African nationalistic approach, because it's like we're already practicing nationalism. But the question is, whose nationalism? Because when we're partaking in assimilationism, we're supporting white nationalism. That's white nationalism. This is
white pan-Europeanism. Europeanism.
Yeah,
that's what we could call it.
This is a white nationalist settler colony.
Yeah.
So when we support this nation and we try to assimilate into this nation, that's what we're doing. Yeah. We are being nationalistic. We just are supporting a nationalism that is not our own. It's somebody else's nationalism. That's what's happening. So that's the question we got to ask. Just like when we talk about in education, culturally responsive pedagogy. All pedagogy is culturally responsive. The question is, whose culture is it? It's somebody's culture. So the question is, okay, well, we want to, have a pedagogy that is, culturally relevant to the black children in the class and based on their lived experience. That's what we want to have. So how do we do that? How do we achieve that? Then we got to make some different math problems. And see, then here come the racists when you say that, because they be, you want to sacrifice rigor. No, we don't got to sacrifice rigor. Actually, we can create more rigor, and make it relevant. So, but that's just that, like, that European mindset that, there's this hierarchical ideology they have where it's like, what we do is the best and everything else is going to be like DJ Khaled, we the best. That's how Europeans are. Like, whatever they do is the best, and what everybody else does has to be secondary or tertiary. Yeah, but that's just and that's why we got to stop buying into their definitions. Because once you buy into that, because that's power. That's what that's what Bobby Seale and Huey Newton in the Black Panther. That's what they talk about, the definition of power. To define phenomena and then make it act in a desired manner. So once you accept their definition, I think also, like, a lot of people, like Wade Nobles talks about this, like, how do we define phenomena? How do you define it? When I give you the definition, that means I have power over you. I can control you because I gave you the definition. And if you once you accept my definition,
it's your reality.
It's your reality. I've created your reality. I've created your experience. I've cultivated your experience by giving you the definitions of your reality. But at any moment, you could say, no, I don't accept this. I don't believe this. And people are going to look at you and get mad and get angry, but so what? But that's what powerful people do. They make their own definitions. So, and then, but then they will market, like we've been marketed to, what the definition of certain things should be, instead of creating our own definitions.
That's right.
So this happens all the time.
Again, excellent point once again, brother. Reconstruction, that era, has me captivated right now, Akil. I've been reading books on that time pocket because, to that same point about redefining who we are, you're talking about just in a 10, 15-year window, 20-year pocket. You're talking about us being senators. You're talking about us starting HBCUs.
Mm-hmm.
Literacy rate gets cut in half. We do all of these things.
Public schools.
Public schools. We started the public schools. Thank you for saying that. We started the public school system, especially in South Carolina and the South all throughout, right? So then I think about 40 acres and a mule. And Akil, I don't know how I never asked you this question. On my flight, I was like, I never asked Akil about reparations, man. From a mathematical approach, what do you think would be that number? Let's say in a perfect world that it does happen. I feel like that they would call somebody such as yourself a great black mathematician. What number do you think that would be? Because now knowing that we didn't get that 40 acres and a mule, and applying inflation and all those things,
compound growth,
and bro, it's this great book I'm reading. Well, I just finished it, Blood at the Root, where it talks about a racial cleansing in America, about Forsyth County and all of these things about Oscarville and how our land, it was stolen here in Georgia, and now that same piece of land is top 5 richest counties in the country. So if per person, what would that look like in your own eyes for us to get a check for reparations? What do you think that would look like?
So that would be very difficult for me to do without having researched like more information. But I would assume it would bankrupt this country. Because there's so many of us, and again with the compounding. But then, I mean, another thing that comes into play is the fact that like money's not real. It's just an idea. And what is value? Like, how do we put a value on a dollar? The government will just print more money. Just like we would say in elementary school when we learned about recessions and debt and whatnot. And then as children, we would say, well, why don't they just print more money? And then the teacher responds by saying, well, they can't do that because then that'll cause inflation. And then years later, you find out that, you study quantitative easing and you study monetary policy. You realize that's what they're doing anyway. What we were saying that they should do back then, like anyway. And that's, why that's one of the reasons there is inflation. Inflation is another way to steal money without stealing it because, sure, keep the $100. That's cool. But I'm going to extract the value from the $100. But you'll never know the difference because you're still going to watch your favorite rapper on their video, doing money phones with $100 bills. And you're not going to stop to think, well, how much is that $100 worth? Because through inflation, they extract the value. But sure, keep the money. Keep the $100 bills. It's cool. But what's the buying power? And these are the questions that aren't going to be asked, right? Because there's no mathematical analysis. When you get into the habit of mathematical analysis, you start asking better questions. So you're not just asking. So it's like when kids say, man, I don't need this class. All I need to know how to do is count my money. It's like, all right, you're counting your money, but you're not considering buying power. You're not considering the value. You're not considering what's going to be the value of that dollar that you have that you get from your paycheck after inflation. What's the inflation rate? Do you know how to calculate that? Do you understand percentages? All these things become very relevant. So in terms of reparations, man, my first thought is that I think it would bankrupt this nation. If we got an actual owed amount, if you could put a price on it. I mean, our experience, I don't think you can really, you can't really put a price on that. The horror and the trauma and the actual lived experience, breaking up families, you know what I'm saying? Like sometimes, It was I grew up in a 2-parent household. It was 5 of us, 5 children, right? And sometimes I think nowadays, especially now as a parent and as an uncle, I think about, like, I might be at my mom's house one day and I'm like sitting there and I'm around my nephews and I have one niece and I'm like, wow, like once upon a time, you know, if we were on a plantation, the plantation owner might have been a poor businessman. He might not have been fiscally responsible. He might have been a degenerate gambler and had a gambling debt. So then how's he going to make up for that gambling debt?
Y'all got to go.
One of us got to go. So my sister might get sold to another plantation.
She's more valuable, yeah.
I never see my sister again.
Yeah.
That's real shit.
Your mother, your father.
Yeah.
Separated.
So then when we think about the reparations conversation, like, how do you put a dollar value on that? Mm-hmm. You know? Yeah. Those types of things. But that's not to say that we're not owed something. We definitely owed something. But I think while we are owed something, we should understand that whatever we do get, if we do get something, it would never be enough. No matter what the number is, it would never be enough. You know, I think we have to take that into consideration, you know, because of the horrors of the actual circumstance and what we actually experienced.
It's away and it's done. And I'll be damned, 120 plus years later, I see the same exact method happening in real time. But to your point, that's why reading is so fundamental. What were your own thoughts and opinions on this case? And also, you were talking about critical thinking, analysis, and now we see this apply where we have to critically think as a people towards this case. And also, he had to critically think because he was in a critical moment, right? So what were your own thoughts about this case in your own eyes, Akil?
So I still want to read more about the case. A lot of the details, I've been hearing a lot of things about the case, but like I said, I would like to read more about it. I think there's a lot of information that was left out and not shared with the public. I do think the brother was railroaded, you know, just based on like my experience with just understanding the American judicial system or so-called judicial system. Like you mentioned in the voir dire with the jury selection process, that's one thing. You know, I think of, you know, people like Mumia Abu-Jamal and how he got railroaded and just a lot of inconsistencies, you know, with his case back in like, what was that, like 83, something like that. Yeah, man. But one of the things that concerned me was some of the commentary that I saw from the public, people saying things like, you know, essentially attempting to apply mathematical reasoning, but doing it incorrectly and very poorly. You know, people saying things such as, you know, stabbing a person is not a proportionate response to being shoved. Right, but leaving out the fact that, well, the person that shoved him was 60 pounds heavier than him. So that's the difference right there, right? Because if you say, well, I guess the assumption is that, well, they should have just shoved him back. Anthony should have shoved him back. But if he's 60 pounds heavier than me, that's not a proportionate response, right? Also, it wasn't just the one white boy. It was a group. They were trying to jump him. Also, you got to take into account, you know, historical reality. It's the state of Texas, group of white boys approached me. I might have been in fear for my life.
Stand your ground state.
And then what do I do? What should a person do when they fear for their life? What should they do? Because we could have said, well, you know, because some people say, well, why did he have a knife? I don't know. I don't know why he had a knife. Why does anybody carry a knife?
Some people say for his cleats, for his spikes to help turn him in and out. That's what I've heard as a theory as well.
Yeah. Could have been a perfectly reasonable, you know, explanation. You know, if you give a person the benefit of the doubt, if you respect their humanity, then you provide them with the benefit of the doubt. If you don't respect their humanity, then you say, you know, they were up to no good, essentially, right? But just a lot of things, I have a lot of thoughts about it. But I just think our critical analysis has to be better, with these types of things. But I, at best case scenario, as a father of two boys, two black boys, and an uncle of 7 black nephews, I would like to think that as a result of this case, since the white boy that was the aggressor died as a result of being the aggressor, I would like to think, I would hope, hope is a strong word, that white boys will be less likely to harass, my 2 sons or one of my nephews, because they might consider what the consequences might be. Since that did happen, it's unfortunate for the brother that he's gonna have to serve that prison time. Like I said, I think he was railroaded, but I would like to study more details of the case for myself. I think there were it seems that there were a lot of things that were left out. It wouldn't be the first time that, in the American judicial system, that a black person did not receive a fair trial. So that's to be expected. Some people have made comments that, conflict avoidance is the best strategy. And I see validity in that, because, we know what's going to happen, because it's going to be very hard, because human beings can defend themselves, can defend their person. But if you don't respect the humanity of that person, you can't defend yourself, because you're not a human. Human beings can defend themselves. But if the society deems you less than human, then you can't defend yourself. Speaking of Du Bois, one of the many things that Du Bois said that was very profound is that I begin all of my studies with the fundamental assumption that the African is a human, which really seems like obvious, but it's actually a very profound thing, because how many studies and how many conversations and how many thoughts about black people begin with the fundamental assumption that we're not human. So I think this case is like another situation where it's like, okay, yeah, these people aren't human. So we're going to treat them in a certain way because they're not human, But, this whole was it self-defense? Was it not self-defense? Was it a proportional response? There are a lot of details that go into that I think people are leaving out. The historical reality, of America, of the state of Texas. What is my expectation that will happen to me if a group of white boys are attacking me and attempting to jump me and cause me physical harm? What should I do? If I couldn't avoid the situation, like I was there. So it's like, what was I supposed to do? You know what I mean? But again, I think, and I also hope that this moves and motivates more of us to move toward some more nationalistic approaches, some more black nationalistic approaches, some more ways in which we develop our own spaces. Because if black people and white people can't be at a track meet together without somebody, being harassed to the point where they felt the need to defend themselves, and someone ends up dying, then we need our own spaces, because these people are uncivilized. Like we talked about earlier, the 5 civilized tribes. Like who are you to determine whether somebody's civilized or not? So I hope at best, that, we'll begin to move toward that. Yeah. Because I think that could have avoided this. That could have prevented this from happening if we had our own space. Wow. Our own space, our own schools. because if we can't get along, then we can't get along. Then we gotta do things among ourselves.
Pattern recognition, man.
Yeah.
We have to see the pattern.
Yeah. But I'm very curious about this case, and I wanna read more information about it. I remember when it first was in the media, when it first happened, and I didn't take the time to really read, what happened and the details. I read some of the details, but I didn't really do a deep dive.
Right.
But I would like to do a deep dive. Man, I've heard that like videos were omitted.
Yep.
What actually happened was not shown to the jury, and but then you had an all-white jury anyway.
And the judge is a far-right conservative as well.
Yeah, so it's par for the course.
Yeah, it is.
It's par for the course. I don't want our people. One concern I do have is that our many of our people are so surprised. I don't think we should be surprised. We have to understand America. We have to understand our experience in America. And also another thing, I think I did mention the historical relevance, right? And some people would say, and see, it's interesting because there's some people that say the history of racism is irrelevant to this case. And I think some of those same people that would say the history of racism is irrelevant are the same people that would respect a therapist telling them that you need to deal with your traumas from your history. Because they would never tell the therapist, my past trauma has nothing to do with my life right now. Then how can you say like the history of America or the history of Texas and race relations in Texas have nothing to do with how the young man responded? So they're picking and choosing. They're playing games. So yeah. But again, in terms of, critical thinking, mathematical reasoning, in terms of considering proportionate responses, people saying like, being shoved by somebody 60 pounds heavier than you is significant. And maybe shoving them back or even punching on them may not be a proportionate response from you. And also, especially if it's a group of people that are attacking you. So you're talking about a 4-on-1, maybe it was 3-on-1. So yeah, but it's an unfortunate situation, but it's very American though. It's very much American.
Defining our realities, our definitions. Akil, man, talk to me about the overall intersection between gerontology and mathematics.
So this is something that this is a conversation I was having with my cousin. My cousin had recently graduated. She got shout out to her. She got her degree in gerontology, so studying the elderly. And what I'm trying to do is work with the elderly to teach them math. Either refresh them in terms of mathematics or teach them certain mathematical topics, for the first time. So that not only can they develop their they can help to maintain their cognitive ability as we get up in age. We tend to lose some of our cognitive ability. This can, I guess, slow that process, but also to strengthen family bonds. So like, just imagine like when you're young and you go to grandma's house because she got to babysit you because your mom got to work, your dad got to work. But what if she could help you with your algebra homework? What if grandma or your grandpa could like help you with your math homework, help you with your geometry? How powerful would that be? That would like really change the community, for the better, like significantly, So that's one of the things that's another initiative that I have, to work like with the elderly to develop their math skills so that they can help their grandchildren or great grandchildren, or great nieces, great nephews, and it's benefiting the elders because, like I said, it's going to slow the process of cognitive loss, right? But it also strengthens the family bond. between the grandparents or the great grandparents and the children. So it's gonna do all that.
It's a beautiful thing, brother. Man, you recently had a full circle moment. Third
Yeah.
grade math teacher. Be more. Hey, talk to us, man, about that overall experience.
Yeah. So this past spring, I had the benefit of doing like several math workshops at different elementary and middle schools, a couple high schools too, out in Baltimore where I grew up at. And the last one I did for the school year was at a school named Bernard Harris Senior Elementary School. It's in East Baltimore. And I did the workshop. Everything went well. Packed up my stuff. I'm leaving out of the school building. I come out the school building. I look across the street, and I realize that there's a church across the street, but I realize that this is the church where my third grade teacher, Miss Johnson, that's where her funeral was held at. She passed away like maybe in like 2018, I think 2018, yeah. So, and I went to her funeral. I was there, paid my respects. But she was my first teacher at that school because I went to a different school previously, the beginning of third grade. So I transferred to that school midway through the school year. And she was my first teacher in that school. And I remember learning in third grade, I learned long division. Also the multiplication algorithm. I learned the multiplication algorithm. I also learned long division in her class, Miss Johnson's class. And, you know, when I reflected as I was walking to my car, I was like, so now I'm here, I'm a grown man, have this company, all this math. I was just in this building right here, this school across the street from where my third grade teacher's funeral was at 8 years ago. And, you know, I'm teaching to parents and to youth some of the same things that she taught me back in 88. So it just was really, I just took a moment, I just really reflected, like as I was walking to my car and then like putting my things in the trunk and whatnot and then getting in the car, and I just slowed down for a moment. And I just thought back about like, you know, how life is really a beautiful thing. Yeah. Yeah, and I was reminded of her because it was like, wow, okay, so when she made transition, that's where the community came out and paid their respects, like right in that building right there across the street from this building, where I just delivered my last math workshop of the school year. I think this spring I did like maybe 12 or 13 of them, and this was the last one. So yeah, I just took a moment to pause and just think about that. Just think about it significant, and, you know, just had that whole concept of like paying it forward, you know, paying things forward and just, you know, taking what you learn and what you've been taught and just providing it to the community, you know?
I am because we are, man.
Yeah.
It's a real thing, bro.
Yeah, definitely.
Thing, man. Orange and blue skies right now, Akil. Shout out to the Knicks right now, man.
Yeah.
I am rooting for y'all. Y'all beat my Hawks. But after that, I was rooting for y'all because, man, I love Brunson, Josh Hart. I love his game. OG, I love OG. Cat hooping.
Yeah.
Mikal Bridges. Jose Alvarado. He played at Tech. So I'm rooting for y'all, man. And how are you feeling, bro, right now as a Knicks fan? Last time that we were talking, I don't even think that the playoffs had started yet. And now, y'all in the finals, bro.
Yeah.
Of 3-1. How you feeling? Mathematically, how you feeling about your chances right now? Bro, what's it looking like? First time since, 73 that y'all can
Of
actually
winning,
win it?
yeah. Last time we
win
won
it.
was 73.
99 played in the finals, but
Yeah.
won it last time since 73. How you feeling right now, man?
I'm looking forward to it. I'm feeling very optimistic. It's been a long time coming. Sports is cool. I'm not a diehard fan, but I'm a fan. I'm a Knicks fan. I've been a Knicks fan my whole life. And I would like to see them win. And, you know, one of the things I think about is I always try to find the math in everything. I try to find the inherent math lessons in everything. So, you know, even when we're watching the NBA finals, like, we can practice math, you know. Some basic things that I even started doing with Kwame is having him, he's not really ready for this yet, but having him add up the total number of points that have been scored. between the two
Especially this
teams.
past game too.
Yeah.
Going down by 29, 71 to 42, you come back. Man,
And,
that's
and
awesome.
and even that, like when you say down by 29, that's something that we take for granted because we've been watching sports for so long and we know how to do subtraction. But young children don't have as much experience with doing subtraction. So it's a great opportunity for them to be able to practice subtraction. So to the parents that say, which I believe, this is not meant to, accuse them of being disingenuous, but to the parents that say, like, I don't have the time to, do all this extra stuff and like teach my children math and all that. I'm like, that's cool, but what I try to do is show you ways to incorporate the math lessons within things you're already doing. So it's like small things, like add up, okay, how many points the Knicks got, how many points the Spurs got? What's the total number of points scored? Add them up. Total, what does total mean? That's the results you get after you add everything up. Who's winning? Okay, even that's something else we take for granted. Being able to compare numbers. Children in like pre-K and kindergarten, they're not as fluent. So you tell them like, okay, who's winning? They might not know that like 34 is more than 28. It gives them a chance to practice that skill. And then once they know, okay, well, if it's 34 to 28, then you ask them, okay, how much are they winning by? That's right. So then they got to know, okay, well, what operation do I do? They got to figure that out. And you can talk them through these things. Like, what operation you got to do? Oh, you got to subtract. All right. So I got to do 34 minus 28. Now, we know it's 6. Right? But they, and that's something else I didn't think about, what you just said. Two threes.
Yeah.
So then you can even ask the question, okay, well, so now we're talking about like denominations of numbers. Like, what are the different ways that they can tie the game? They can shoot 2 threes, tie the game.
Yeah.
They can shoot three twos and make it.
Yeah.
But all of this is mathematics. We're practicing math. We can get into percentages, field goal percentage.
Free throws especially.
Free throw percentage.
Because, man, Wemby, he missed 2, and he's a high free throw
Clutch.
percentage.
Yeah, he's like 80%. He's like an 80, 88%.
And he missed not one, but both. Yes, that's very rare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, man. So it's like it's so many ways that we could just practice math. We just practice mathematics just while we're watching the game. We talk about percentages. Like I said, percentages. Like, and you know what's interesting? Effective field goal percentage.
Yep.
I just learned about that not too long ago. Effective field goal percentage.
Yep.
Where they factor in, your 3 points, your 3-point shots. Because the person that is, 2 for 4 and shoots 2-pointers versus the person that's 2 for 4 and shoots 3-pointers. Yeah, that's a different percent. It's 50%, but you're shooting, you're shooting for points you're shooting baskets that will yield more points. So therefore, you should be afforded a higher percentage.
Isn't that crazy too? Like all of this math in basketball, especially like plus minus, right? Where they could say OG when he's on the court, he's a plus 18, which means like when he's on the court, he's gonna like contribute to about 18 points every single time. Or let's say Wemby or De'Aaron Fox, even better, who blew the game, he could be considered like a -6. So every single time he's on the floor, you're probably gonna lose 6 points or turnovers or things. So it's just all this math to your point.
And critical thinking. I think that was a mistake. Clearly, it was a mistake. Like,
could have just ran out the time.
De'Aaron Fox, yeah. But all of that is like, you got to be able to think about scenarios. And you got to be able to think quickly.
Though? He said he thought that he could outrun OG. So to your point, that's about space and time.
Distance, rate, time formula. The distance, rate, time formula. Wow. He thought he could outrun him. His calculation was off.
Major.
So, yeah, man, it's so much mathematics, but it's like it just reminds us like we seem to be so far away, but we're so close at the same time. Because with everything that we do, everything that we're involved in, we can practice math. And I think, and that's what's going to have to make the difference. That's what's going to have to make the difference, man. Like, in terms of developing confidence and our mathematical ability, like meeting people where they are, with activities that they already enjoy, that they feel confident in doing, and then you say, okay, well, I'm going to use this thing that you're comfortable with and that you enjoy. I'm going to use this to teach you math, as opposed to what typically is done, which is I give you something that is abstract, which you may not understand, which is beyond the scope of your lived experience, and I'm going to try to teach you algebra or geometry through that. We can do that later. We can do that. The thing that's outside your experience, we can do that later. But right now, let's first deal with what you do participate in, what you do embrace and enjoy, and let's learn the geometry and the algebra or the trigonometry or the pre-calculus or the arithmetic based on that. And there are a lot of things that we're doing already anyway. That can be, if we start to think outside the box more, they can be things that can be useful tools, very valuable tools in terms of developing our math skills, so that we can have, and to be clear, it's not just a class that we're forced to take. This is about developing critical thinking ability, and a lot of things that we complain about that our community doesn't have access to is often because of a lack of critical thinking ability about these circumstances and about these situations. So I believe that math is the missing piece. Math is the missing piece. And it's so wild how they make it available, sort of. Because oftentimes the teachers aren't properly trained.
That's right.
Yeah, teachers aren't properly trained. When I started teaching in 2005, I wasn't properly trained. I wasn't an education major, but I think even if I had been an education major, I still would not have been properly trained. A lot of education majors aren't fully properly trained. It's a lot of learning you got to do on the job. Which is to be expected, but you could still come into the field as a first year teacher at a higher level of understanding than what most colleges provide you.
That's right.
In that, that education track, or within that education major. But it doesn't happen. But what we got to do is we got to figure out how to teach the community to be able to teach the math and use what we're already doing in terms of our everyday life as the basis for those teachable moments.
Bro, that's the title right there of the episode. Math is the missing piece.
Math is the missing piece.
I like that, brother, man. Akil, you gave us another 2-hour classic. I feel like, man, this was the best one yet. Yeah, you killed this sit down, man. What are some of your plans, man, for the summer of 2026? Because it's only June 12th on the day of this recording. So, man, what's your plans for the full duration of the summer? What you got planned for the people, for yourself? What's going on?
Yeah, so this will be the third summer that we offer the Histomatics summer program out in Baltimore. In-person program serving middle school students and high school students. About 20 middle schoolers come in for about 2 hours in the morning. Then we break for lunch, have a lunch break. And, about 20 high school students come in the afternoon from 12 to 2. So I'm doing that for 5 weeks, from July 6th to August the 7th. There are also going to be some field trips, some cultural and historical field trips in and around Baltimore. So, which will supplement the math lessons. Because what we do in Histomatics is we're covering 2 books this summer. We're covering Malcolm X Speaks, a book of his speeches, and A Panther is a Black Cat by Reginald Major, which is a book about the history of the Black Panther Party. So we're covering those 2 books, and I'm going to create math word problems from the content of each of those books. So the students are going to get to develop their math proficiency. They're also going to get the practice with critical reading. Because a lot of students, they know how to recognize syllables and put words together and pronounce them, but they don't really understand what those words mean in a sentence or in a paragraph. They can't really explain it. They don't really, they don't have enough practice with comprehension. And also they're developing historical awareness from reading this content. So that's 3 major benefits. So we're doing that. I'm going to be working with Kwame. Kwame's starting the 2nd grade in the fall. and I want to give him a head start in the math, definitely. So we're going to be doing some work on a regular basis, working on, the second grade, math curriculum that they use in Baltimore City Public Schools. So we're going to be doing that, and I highly recommend that to all parents too. Whatever grade your child is going into in the fall, get that curriculum, get those workbooks, sit down with your kids, sit down with your children every day. If not every day, every other day, but just whatever frequency you can afford to, maintain, just, adhere to that and just expose your children so they have that head start. So when they're seeing it in class in August or September, they're seeing it for the second time. So that's what me and Kwame going to be doing. I got a couple other projects. I got this online fractions course that I need to finish. It's long overdue. There's some quiz problems that I need to edit, because the brother I was working with, he was using ChatGPT. Initially, he used ChatGPT to develop the quiz questions, but ChatGPT has its limitations. AI has its limitations. So I got to go in and actually, develop the questions myself, so it'll be in my voice.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? That's what's got to happen. So those are a couple things we're doing this summer. Asada's going to be out in Denver for 2 weeks for a dance institute, a dance intensive. Yeah, dance intensive at Akil Parker Robinson Dance School.
You gotta tell me, man, what you think about the food when you go out there. You gotta hit me up. Let me know what you think.
I'm gonna be there. I go out. I'm gonna fly out there with her. I'll be there. It's gonna be a quick turnaround. We're gonna fly out that Saturday morning. I'm gonna come back on Sunday.
Okay.
So yeah, because I need to be back so I can teach that Monday morning. Because that'll be going into the second week of the hystematics program.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I salute you, man. So much, Akil, bro. Keep up all the great work. All this math, too, man. Where can everybody tap in with you? Tutoring sessions. Where can they follow you, contact you, all that good stuff, bro?
Yeah, so definitely go to the website, allthismath.com, if you want, tutoring, virtual tutoring, speaking engagements, professional development, anything like that. You can connect with me on the website. Also, tap in with me on social media. All This Math on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. That's where you'll see a lot of my content from conversations like this on this podcast, and also other podcasts where I'm just trying to promote math to the community, and make people feel comfortable with it. You know what I mean? And also definitely make sure, if you're not already, make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, the All This Math YouTube channel. Definitely subscribe to that. We got over 1,000 videos, math tutorial videos, ranging from arithmetic all the way up to calculus. So we're covering all grades and age levels, pretty much. So we got what you need. We got what you need for this school year, next school year after that, school year after that. And I actually haven't added content to the YouTube channel in a few months. But it's already a lot of content on there, over 1,000 videos. So, but after the summer program, in August, when the summer program ends, I may start adding content again. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, as y'all see, man, one of our most brilliant minds, bro, Akil Parker. Keep up all the great work, brother. I salute you, man. Keep doing what you're doing is needed, man. As you see, out in Dallas, Oklahoma, people are seeing what you're doing. We're seeing the work. Keep applying pressure because it's needed now more than ever. So, man, keep going for us as a people. So, man, I salute you, brother. Man, thank you for always tapping in, bro.
Yeah,
when
man.
you touch down in the city, you already know, man. Anytime when you're in Atlanta, I'm one text, one phone call away, so we can always do this, man, for the people, because people, they love tapping in, seeing what you got to say, learning from you. So, man, keep up all the great work, brother, for real.
I appreciate y'all having me, man.
Yes,
you can't just share your platform with anybody, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate y'all sharing it with me.
Always.
And letting me put some of my ideas out there.
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
It's an easy call. Peace, family, man. Thank y'all for always tuning in, showing love. Akil Parker, man, he gave us another classic. So, man, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Tap in with his channel as well. All this math. Until next time, family. Bless be your host, Caleb Smith. Peace.